This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, Perri is one of the most visible and respected plumbing and HVAC companies in the state of New Jersey. This year, they're celebrating their 50th year of business. Incredible. Here to talk about where they've been and where they're going for their customers is Perri's esteemed general manager, Christian Dunning. Christian, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure to be here.
So, I say this a lot. No matter where I'm driving in New Jersey, I see an Perri truck somewhere. You guys must be in the Easy Pass Hall of Fame right off the bat. When I drove here today, I saw one. So how much ground are you guys covering in the state?
Well, we try to cover the whole state of New Jersey. We've got just under 200 vehicles, so it's easy to see them.
Right. Yeah.
The bright green. So
you can't miss it.
We're constantly expanding. So our headquarters is in Monmouth County.
Okay.
And we've got an office in Fairfield. Right. So we try to certainly starting off the business in Monmouth County. Mm-hmm. A lot of our customers are focused in Monmouth and Ocean, but we're expanding certainly on the northern New Jersey side as well.
Okay. How many employees about?
325.
No kidding. Wow, that's a lot of people. Give us the history of Perri. When did the company start? We established 50 years ago, but how did it start?
Yeah, 1971, Albert Perri started the company with 3 employees, so wow. 325 from 3.
Yeah. We call that exponential growth.
That's right. I wasn't around 50 years ago,
right.
But
I was.
It's come a long way, and it's a pleasure to be a part of it.
And it did get picked up by was it American? Residential Services, right?
American Residential Services back in 2014.
Okay. Is it important that Perri kind of maintains that small company feel? Even though you guys have grown, it seems like you're almost like neighborly in a way. You can just make that call.
Yeah, it very much functions as a local company, mm-hmm. even though I say we partnered with ARS because it's really just a resource. We still operate the same way. We're still passionate about our customers and our employees, and we still function like a normal company. We source locally, okay. Everything. So it's not a typical relationship. It still functions as a small business here in New Jersey.
How about employees? I mean, you mentioned 300 plus. Are these folks that stick around a long time? I mean, they don't want to leave the company, or is it a mix of new and old?
It's a mix of new and old. We certainly have, I think our most tenured employee is 32 years.
Right. Wow.
So that's a long time, 32 of 50. That checks the box.
Yeah, right.
So we certainly have some new people, growing exponentially. It requires new faces. So I'm consistently amazed by the employees that we have and the things that they do for our customers. We had one employee who just recently, on his way to a service call, helped put out a fire and then continued to his service call. It was amazing.
So he saw a fire somewhere along the way?
It was in the same neighborhood, so he stopped, helped them put out the fire. The fire department got there, right. And then he went on to his call, and the person that he helped put out the fire called us. He didn't even tell us that he did this.
No kidding.
It was amazing. So
I hope the person who made the original call, who was waiting, I hope they were understanding, if this guy came
yeah,
in
you're
with,
late.
or with soot in his face too.
It was it's amazing, but stuff like that happens all the time, and they're tremendous. The workforce that we have.
Yeah, and I'm warm to this kind of line of work. You talk about plumbing and HVAC. My father owned a plumbing business back when I was a kid, and boy, the days when we had a home phone and a work phone, and that phone would ring at 3 a.m. for some emergency job, and then you go to that emergency, you're dreading that call, and you go, and then the people want to know how fast can you get this done, and how expensive is it going to be, how cheap, how cheap can you do it for them?
Yeah.
So you're coming from a standpoint of these people really need you. To that effect, how important is preventative maintenance on all your plumbing and HVAC?
Yeah, it's really important. A lot of people don't think they don't worry about it until they have a problem, and then sometimes it's too late. If you haven't done anything. It's kind of like changing the oil in your car. If you never do it, that car may run great for a while, but you're going to have real problems. And it's similar to that.
Yeah.
If you don't do some preventative maintenance, we try to do it in the spring and the fall and make sure everything's working properly, everything is good. And in celebration of our 50th year in business, we're doing a $50 tune-up so that we're able to come out, normal price is $99 for that, so it's half price.
Right.
And it's just really to check it out, make sure it's working properly.
What are we talking about, HVAC or plumbing or both?
Both.
Okay.
So we're, same thing on the plumbing side. Your water heater, you kind of just expect to turn on the faucet and it to be hot all the time, but it's got to be serviced all the same. And sometimes people just think until it doesn't work, and then it's like, oh, what do I do now? Right. Sometimes it's a little time spent beforehand is a good thing.
It's funny. I have a hot water heater that's like 13 years old, and I'm like, is today the day where it stops? So I think that's probably a good number, right? 13, 15 years is when. Yeah,
and I don't know what it is about water heaters. People like to collect stuff by the water heater, and then our technicians tell a customer, what happens when this fails is all that water goes somewhere. And so it's not a good storage facility, but sometimes it's a little better, a little foresight's better than waiting till the last minute.
Right.
So
let's go back to COVID about a little bit. What kind of challenges were there for your company, and how hard was it to kind of keep the lights on through the thick of it last year?
I don't think anybody saw it coming, so it's not like you could prepare in advance. It was kind of like, Governor Murphy had a press conference, and then it was like, whoa. Yeah. So
changing it down.
Obviously, protecting our employees and protecting our customers was at the forefront, and all the obvious stuff. We had every truck sanitized, and we kind of changed how we operated. So it was commonplace to be on your cell phone in their front yard and say, turn on your thermostat. Right. We'd do what we had to outside. Right. And then if we had to come inside, you'd be like, hey, if you want to go in the bedroom, I'll come in the front door.
Right. Very touch and go, right?
It was very, keep your distance. And our employees were great. They worked the whole time. They didn't complain. They took precautions, which is not always. You're in a hot attic. You don't want to wear a mask, but they did. Yeah. So it's really incredible that we made it through that. But what we also knew is people were all working remotely, so they were all in their house.
Right.
And you kind of want the air conditioning to work when you're at home. So there was increased demand because everyone was at home.
Yeah, exactly.
And
if I'm going to be here, I want to be more comfortable.
I want to be comfortable, right? So it was an undertaking, but again, I'm constantly amazed at our employees, what they were willing to do. It wasn't easy, but they did it, and kind of thought outside the box on how can we do this and stay at a distance.
Yeah, well, didn't you have some instance where somebody actually didn't want people in the house, but they needed work, so you got on the phone, and
That's
it was
right.
like telehealth, really. I mean,
and that's what we kind of did is you turn on the thermostat and I'll check out here what's going on. And it was amazing.
I got to tell you, if I got a phone call and explained it, I would be lost after tighty righty, loosey lefty. I'm done.
Well, most are, and that's okay. But that's why we could walk them through it and stuff.
Right.
And hey, turn on the thermostat.
Right. Let's talk. You mentioned earlier the kind of the long-standing AJ Perri Cares program. How did that change over the past year?
Yeah, what we did, we expanded the program. We've done it for a long time to recognize veterans of their service, and something I'm very passionate about. But we expanded that to all frontline workers, which included healthcare as well as police and fire. Okay. And so we were able to take care of some people who were in need, didn't have time to care for themselves because they were they were working. Right. And, we did that several times last year. We replaced a water heater. We do it all at no charge. And our employees want to do it. They volunteer
I was going to ask
for it.
That must be like probably the most fun gig they can have in a way, because they know they're really helping somebody out.
It is. And it, I would say everyone enjoys it. We do it as often as we can. And we may stick with one lucky recipient was an ex-military and a police officer. Okay. So, kind of did double duty. And it's really a program that everyone takes a lot of pride in.
Right. How about, just on this, we're kind of wrapping up here, how important is it for AJ Perri to be so involved in the community?
Well, I think it's really important because, we all live here. Yeah. We're a part of the community. So, and, it goes beyond AJ Perri Cares. We do, our parent company is headquartered in Memphis. And so St. Jude's a big thing for us because the hospital being in Memphis.
Totally.
And
it's a great charity. So
we do that on a national basis, but then we also, some of our radio partners do a St. Jude, and we participate locally as well. And, we're all passionate about that. October is our Cancer Awareness Month, where we do several different drives for that. Right. And we try to do stuff on a very normal interval, but we're certainly passionate about some of those things. We're also the Tim Tebow Foundation is a foundation that takes care of certain different causes that and they do an event called Night to Shine, where, special needs, it's kind of like a prom for special needs. And so we always participate in that too. Yeah. So we have a lot of different things that we participate in, and it's, I would say everyone, likes that participation and that engagement. Right. So, and it gives you a purpose greater than, just heating and air.
Yeah. It's all good stuff. So AJ Perri is clearly doing all the right things for its customers and for the community. Christian Dunning, General Manager, AJ Perri, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll be back right after this.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first. That connects you to technology and each other. That's built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only officially authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, legalized recreational cannabis is well on its way in the state of New Jersey. Here to talk about what it means for safety in the workplace is Ray Cantor, NJBIA Vice President of Government Affairs. Ray, thanks so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure, Bob.
All right, so before we get into what this is going to mean for safety in the workplace, let's just go back to where we are in terms of this industry really being established. It was last November, correct?
Yes.
That the voters, through referendum vote, passed legalized marijuana. And then it went through the legislature, correct?
Correct. So first, the voters had to legalize marijuana, or at least that's the way the legislature set it up, by putting it on the ballot. Then it had to go through a legislative process where the legislature had to adopt a law setting out the parameters of how this new industry was going to work. And now it's up to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission to adopt the first set of regulations to basically frame out, how the whole industry is going to operate.
What was NJBIA fighting for in terms of ensuring workplace safety with the establishment of this new industry?
Well, we basically kept our comments solely on the workplace safety issue. The problem with cannabis is that, unlike alcohol, we could do a blood alcohol test and determine whether or not a worker is inebriated, impaired at that point in time. Cannabis remains in your system.
Right.
So any type of test that you might do on the workplace will tell that cannabis is in the system, but it won't tell if you're impaired at that point in time, or maybe you used cannabis the day before or even a week earlier.
Right.
So determining whether or not someone is impaired and therefore jeopardizing the workplace and the public is very problematic.
Right, and so it's obviously, I would assume, much more difficult, if not impossible, to establish a zero tolerance for cannabis in a bloodstream of an employee. I mean, how can you have a zero tolerance policy if somebody could have taken it weeks ago?
Well, and that's the crux of the issue, Bob. So up until now, actually even now, because the law is not in effect until the regulations, are first adopted.
Right, and we'll get to that.
Employers would set zero tolerance policies because, again, ensuring a workplace safety and a number of safety sensitive occupations is critical. They would basically use a blood sample or some other type of laboratory test to tell whether or not cannabis was in your system. It's pass fail. If it is, you fail. If it's not, you pass.
Right.
That is no longer allowed in the law. Employers cannot rely on those tests alone to determine whether or not someone is impaired and therefore violating the workplace safety. There's a whole different system, which I'm sure you're going to be asking about in order to do that, but not being able to use that laboratory testing method makes it extremely difficult to enforce a zero tolerance policy.
Let's talk about what's at stake here. I mean, you mentioned safety sensitive positions. What are they? How can this rule, if it becomes final, how can it really impact safety in the workplace?
Well, we've always taken the position throughout this legislative process that we want a safety first type of legislation. We believe that should trump over someone's rights to be able to use cannabis and use marijuana. So let's take a few occupations. Let's say you are a crane operator working in the middle of downtown Newark. Mm-hmm. Let's assume you are a plant operator at a chemical facility, or a nuclear plant operator, right. Or you're loading the planes at Newark Airport, and you want to make sure that it's balanced out so the plane doesn't fall from the sky. These are occupations where we think it makes so much sense mm-hmm. that we should take any available measures to make sure that those employees are not impaired when they're doing the jobs, because the consequences are so great.
Okay. So we're talking about the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. New commission set up strictly for the lift of this industry in New Jersey. I guess they're going to be putting out rules, correct?
They're going to be putting out rules. The first set of rules will be adopted on August 21st. Unlike the normal
after the show,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Unlike the normal regulatory process where you have a whole proposal and comment period, the way the legislature set this up is that they will adopt rules upon publication, the first set, and then they will be immediately effective, basically establishing this whole new industry. Mm-hmm. And then they have to adopt new rules within 1 year if they want to make any types of changes.
Okay. I wanted to read a stat that came actually in last year's NJBIA Business Outlook survey for 2021 said 44% of respondents said they were substantially concerned about workplace safety if it became law. Obviously, it wasn't law back then. While 33% said they were moderately concerned about workplace safety. So this is a real thing, right? This is not something that's kind of coming out of the air for the business community. What are you asking the CRC to do?
Well, it is a real thing. And New Jersey is the only state that has not seriously addressed the workplace safety issue. Every other state has adopted legalized recreational cannabis, has had exceptions for safety-sensitive positions one way, or the other. What our legislature did, they said you cannot rely on drug testing to determine a zero-tolerance policy. They created something different, a position called workplace impairment
recognition expert.
Thank you.
That's a WIRE. I know the acronym. So.
A whole new acronym. And these are persons who are theoretically going to be trained in coming in, looking at you, doing certain types of physical tests on you, and making the determination whether or not you are impaired or not. Okay. Several problems with that. One, WIREs or a similar counterpart have been used by the state police in alcohol and drug enforcement, on our roads. And the courts, it's being challenged right now in the courts, and we don't know if it's going to be held up as scientifically valid, because there's a lot of questions as to whether or not that training really allows you to make those types of determinations.
Based on science.
But based on science. So
it's almost like it's based on appearance from an outside.
Right. So if you really can't tell by looking at someone, looking at their eyes, and whatever other physical exams you do, whether or not someone is impaired and by what, then it's really an invalid test, and you really can't take employment actions based on that, even though the legislature said so. And plus, these positions don't even exist right now. There are no WIREs. So on day one, August 21st, when the regs are adopted, employers can only take an adverse employment action against someone they suspect who is impaired by using a WIRE, but WIREs don't exist. So we have to quickly try and get them up and running. So to your point, what did we ask the commission? We said, we know you're limited by the law as to what you can or cannot allow through your regulations. But let's set up systems where we could quickly train WIREs and at least try this new system. Again, it's the only system we're allowed to use, and get these people employed. And also, there are a number of federal laws out there right now that do require drug testing and zero tolerance policies. The law didn't address this conflict between what the federal law requires and what the state law prohibits. We want them to clarify that and make sure everyone understands that federal law does preempt state law in these instances. So an airline pilot.
Is that federal thing job specific? Like an airline pilot?
Yeah, there are certain occupations which are governed by specific federal laws that driving a commercial driver's license for a truck, an airline pilot. Those types of jobs are, under federal law, you must have a zero tolerance policy, and you're allowed to do it through drug tests. So again, we have a conflict now between what federal law requires and what state law prohibits. And we need that clarified, because employers won't know which law you're allowed to do.
Where would the cost of training these WIREs come from? Who would it go to? The businesses?
Everything falls on business. So the training falls on the business, the hiring of them falls on the business, and then all the lawsuits that are going to come after this are all going to be on the business, because what the legislature did was create a system with a lot of ambiguity, with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of risk to the public and the workplace, and we need to work our way through this.
Well, it should be interesting what the CRC actually finally says on that. But putting all this workplace safety aside, let's say that is taken care of, and we hope it is, because we don't want to see an accident that could have been prevented through this new rule. Isn't this a good industry in terms of it could bring revenue to the state? Is this something that the business community can get behind?
This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry in New Jersey. It's going to provide a lot of new opportunity for a lot of people to get their foothold and to really grow and employ a lot of people. So We don't know exactly how it's going to work. We'll see how the regs come out. But there will be billions and billions of dollars made in this industry once it gets established.
All right. It should be interesting how the glass ceiling kind of is broken here in New Jersey. Let's talk about switching gears, and this is every pun intended, something called the California Advanced Clean Truck Rule. This is something that New Jersey is attempting to make happen here for zero emission vehicles, correct? What is this all about?
So we rightfully so have a policy in the state where we're trying to reduce our carbon emissions to address the issues of climate change. Mm-hmm. The transportation sector accounts for about 40 some odd % of all carbon emissions in New Jersey. So we need to do something about that.
Right.
We already have rules in place to try to electrify and therefore have reduced carbon emissions from passenger vehicles. This is the next step that DEP is taking. And what they're doing, they proposed a rule to adopt the California program, the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, as you mentioned, and bring that into New Jersey, which starting in the year 2025, trucks sold in New Jersey will have to be zero emission, which basically means right now electric trucks. And there are a lot of concerns we have with using that California program.
I'm going to assume cost is one. What would be the impacts on business?
Well, cost,
trucking companies?
Cost, is obviously one. These trucks cost as much as $100,000 more per truck, given existing technology and cost factors. Mm-hmm. Also, the technology is really not mature. It's one thing if you were having a passenger vehicle, a small delivery truck, becoming electrified. Right. There's another thing when you have to try to electrify a large delivery vessel, a 18-wheeler. The technology really isn't there to carry that much weight over long distances. So we think the department is going too quick, into this world. There are lots of ways where we could use existing technologies, get good carbon reductions right now, without tying ourselves to the California program, which, by the way, is still in a state of flux. California is amending their program at the exact same time New Jersey is looking to adopt it. So we really don't even know what we're adopting yet.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't know everything about California's air quality. I always think ours is better than theirs. I mean, are we talking about the same thing? Yeah. Same air quality in California and New Jersey?
No, we're not. And, because California's air quality is so bad, and it has been historically so, Congress passed a law under the Air Pollution Control Act or the Clean Air Act in the federal level that said if you're going to, as a state, adopt regulations on trucks or cars, you have two options. You could use the federal program, which applies everywhere, or you could opt into the California program. Right. So a number of states have opted in for passenger vehicles. And again, the technology is there. It's still expensive, but it's coming down. But the technology works. Right. For trucks, New Jersey is now going to be the first state proposing to opt into that California program. And again, we think cost, technology, and alternatives basically mean that we should really not be going into California. We should be using the federal system, work with the Biden administration to improve that system. And maybe at some point in time when technology gets better, when costs come down, then we have a different option.
All right, lastly on this subject, I went through some of your very detailed comments to the DEP on this, and you said on the subject of actual carbon reduction, the rule would reduce transportation carbon emissions for the transportation sector by only 1.1% by 2040. Surely there is a better way to reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector. So is it the federal program? Is that what you think we should be doing instead?
No, again, so you're right. We're going through this enormously expensive program with almost no benefit on the carbon side. If we were to use compressed natural gas right now or other low carbon fuels, you could get immediate reductions in carbon emissions from trucks with existing technology at a much lower cost. Okay. But yet we're going through a different process which will begin to ramp up electric trucks without the technology, with bad cost, and with no real environmental benefit.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. Ray Cantor, the man who knows both vehicle emissions and personal inhalations in the same subject, same show. Thank you so much for being here.
Anytime, Bob.
All right. And thank you for joining us on NJBIA's Minding Your Business. We'll see you next time.